Hello.
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 Hello and welcome everybody to episode 10 of the Press Box Quartet. 10 episodes, gentlemen. This has been an absolute treat. Once again, Jonah Boye with Joseph McLaughlin, Colin Struckman, and Steve Callahan. Guys, it's great to be back, and we have a very big special guest that we talked to, Kasey Hudson, a NESN reporter, CBS reporter as well. Getting to learn more about her journey in the sportscasting industry, and as well as just some words of advice for obviously the four of us trying to break through for the sports industry that's so tough to get into. But I think this is going to be a great time having her with us. Welcome back, everybody. It's episode 10 of the Press Box Quartet, and we have a special guest here with us, Kasey Hudson, who works with CBS and NESN as a sideline reporter with the Bruins and Red Sox. And Kasey, it's wonderful to see you here this afternoon. Glad you could join us and kind of get a glimpse of your sportscasting career and just how you're doing in the industry. So we're glad to have you here, and we're looking forward to asking you some really cool questions. And I think with Joe, we're going to lead off with you asking the first couple questions. So what do you got?
Yeah, Casey, thank you so much for your time. I wanted to start with tonight's a big celebration at Fenway Park. It's the women's celebration night as the Red Sox take on the White Sox. And as someone who just recently won a Gracie Award with a bunch of other amazing women at NESN, I mean, tell me what does it mean to you to see women in the sports media industry evolve into what it is now and to play a key part of that and inspiring the next generation of women coming into the sports broadcasting industry?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited about our mutual friend linking us up. But I'm glad you started with that question because I think the first thing that comes to mind is that it's finally becoming a norm. I understand that like today is a game of celebration and last year was a game of celebration. It was the first historic all-female broadcast, but now it's becoming a bit of a no-brainer to have the inclusion and to kind of have that spotlight for women and it not always be kind of the sugar-coated situation. And tonight, to my knowledge, they're taking a very different approach to it. It'll be more of a mentorship approach. So it was cool because this morning I caught up with Alana Rizzo, who's the queen of the MLB, just kind of gassing her up for tonight because no matter how experienced you are in this industry, the nerves are still there. The overthinking is still there, making sure that you're not only doing great for yourself and your reputation, but how that's going to eradicate to every other opportunity for other women in this industry. So I talked to the junior reporter, Bella Daddario, that's going to be sidelined tonight as well. And it's just really cool to see that it's now becoming more normal and people are looking forward to this point of the year where we can honor women in this space and just show that they can do it too. And they have a voice and they have a perspective and they have an approach that is very much needed in this space, not just something that's tolerated.
No, that's great. And I know I actually got to meet Alana Rizzo working in the Cape Cod Baseball League, an amazing person. Just tell me, like, what was it like to meet with her for the first time and get to work alongside someone like that? Like you said, the queen of the MLB. Like, what is it like to work with someone like that?
Gosh, she's a queen in so many ways because I mean, I'm a very transparent person. So, in full honesty, when you meet another woman in this industry, sometimes you're a little nervous because a lot of us have edges that have constantly been groomed trying to make a way for ourselves. And so, there's this natural competitive nature, and some people just put your guard down immediately. And that was Alana. I remember when she came in last year. I was doing Unobstructed Views, Red Sox edition with NESN, and I was doing more of the social role, and they were kind of trying to figure out how to free up the guys like Papelbon and Jared to just be the crazy personalities that they are. And they're like, we're going to bring in Alana. She's got a lot of experience in this and that. And I was like, how's that going to go? Because like I'm excited to meet other people in this space, but sometimes you never know. And the comfort level was immediate. She just has this confidence about her, but also this gravitational pull to make people around her feel welcome. And she's so easy to ask questions to. She's so easy to bounce ideas off of. And like she goes to bat for the people around her because while we were still navigating what that show needed to look like and feel like, baseball wasn't particularly my strong suit. I grew up with more of a football and hockey background. So like I had an insecurity and she was like, oh no, we're not doing this. You're good with this. You're good with research. She knows how to apply to people's strengths and she just does it so naturally. So it was honestly one of the greatest honors meeting her. I immediately went to her as a confidant for either other things in the industry. And even like, though I'm more of a hockey person, she was still a great voice of reason for different situations I had going on in the hockey world. So you're talking about a person who true to form is just so much grace, so much confidence, and just a natural ability to pull people into what she's doing and the vision that she has. And she's one of the easiest people to work with, hands down. And I learned so much from her. I mean, she really helped me fall in love with baseball to a whole different level last year, which was so cool because baseball was my dad's favorite sport. But I decided to be rebellious. So here we are.
I love that. Oh, that's awesome. She's super cool from what I've met of her, but yeah, it's like I got to meet it a little bit, like a little taste of what you get to experience. So that's really cool. But Colin, I knew you had a couple questions, so I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of piggyback off Joe here. I mean, you talked about meeting Alana Rizzo in your career, and that was such a monumental part of your career. So then how would you kind of convey some advice for, let's say people like us, we're 22, 23 years old, trying to break into the industry. So what advice would you have for kind of people in our age range right now?
Make sure you're uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, you're heading in the right direction. If you feel comfortable, you're just going to be doing the same old stuff that everybody else is doing. And I just remember honestly being you guys' age and starting to get some opportunities around Florida and stuff. And like, do I want to be a writer or do I want to lean into content? But people look at content. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen some like the noise lately about like you're immediately labeled an influencer if you do content. And if you're an influencer, then you're looked down upon because you're not taking life seriously. So I think that there's just a lot of things you kind of have to cancel out, and you have to be your authentic self on such a platform and allow yourself to be uncomfortable and criticized. And what I've told a lot of people, and I've had a chance to talk at BC and talk with a class at BU, is as much as people try to label content creation as almost this negative or lazy connotation, you have an opportunity here to really appeal to networks, because the linear situation is just not getting as much pull and viewership as they would like. And so they're looking for the you guys of the world to kind of be the bridge between linear and digital. And like, in all honesty, the past few job opportunities I've had, that's been a huge part of the conversation, is what can you bring on the digital side that would be able to kind of bridge the linear of things. So being consistent with putting content out there, not getting too over structural in your content. I come to learn that because I could lean analytical in a lot of what I do. And some of the feedback I got recently was like, don't let analysis cover your personality. Like, content creation allows people to get to know you. And what I've come to learn is like, if a fan feels like they know you, they're so loyal to you. And that means whatever content you're putting out, whatever direction you go in, whatever you've got going on, if people care about you, they're going to stick with you through all of the ebbs and flows. Because you kind of go through some identity crisis when you're on the content side of things, and you want to produce things that people like, but you don't want to lose yourself in it. So load up on the content, make sure you're uncomfortable. If it feels goofy, you're probably on the right track. Like, the more transparent and vulnerable you are on such a large platform, that's going to get you the next steps into the door. And sometimes you can recreate what people have out there. Like, when I first got to NESN, Johnny Laz, I love his work. I've always just loved how he's a hard on the sleeve kind of guy. I feel like he brought a softer approach to hockey, which made it more easy for people like me to feel confident having a space in hockey. But I realized that him and Open Ice were the only people that were reaching out to players and being like, hey, can we go for a skate? And so, kind of reached out to Johnny, let him know how much I appreciate his work, but NESN wasn't doing it. They're a network that was looking for a digital presence. And for the first time ever covering Beanpot, I'm skating with guys that are now getting their first chance in the NHL and having that moment with them and building that relationship and that bond. So sometimes you can recreate work too, but just, always touch base with the person or the network or the people and make it your own. And so I had a way to make it my own with respecting Johnny and Open Ice. And I feel like that's just what you have to do. You have to constantly put yourself out there and be uncomfortable.
I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, you talk about the digital aspect and with social media, and that I feel like kind of sets yourself apart in the job market. I mean, working in athletic communications at Bryant University, a lot of it was on air, but a lot of it was also social media and graphic design and writing. I feel like those aspects really kind of set yourself apart. So I can see, like, with what you just talked about, that really set yourself apart in gaining those opportunities. So I think that was very interesting to kind of hear that aspect of it. And I mean, a
It
lot
jumps
of your
off the
job
page way
is
more. Yeah,
exactly
it jumps
a
off
lot
the
of your
page way more.
a lot of your job's being on air, but you don't really see the other side of it, kind of like the social media component, like you just mentioned.
Yeah. And I'll say, guys, like the last couple of conversations I've had, and like, my agent's been looking for some other things right now. Networks want to know that you can handle the digital side. And also, like ringside reporters, they're changing what that job description is. You're not just hopping on air and having your cute little hit. You have to be able to show the digital side and be able to edit the behind the scenes. So you kind of have to be more than a one trick pony these days, especially if you want the on camera opportunities. And a great example, I think somebody who's killing it right now is Kendall Shalicki. Like, she's the ringside reporter for the Philadelphia Flyers, but you're getting so much behind the scenes. And then she's quickly hopping on and doing a recap of what she saw at morning skate. And so it's this culmination of being able to have a social media presence, an authentic one, not making it look like it's a headache or you're just throwing up a polished piece of something. People don't care about the polish, and networks, they're gravitating away from this polished production of things. And like right now, Penguins are looking for their new ringside reporter, and they're going in a different direction from the buttoned up ringside stuff. They want to see all of it. So being able to do the graphics, being able to have a social media presence, and just kind of show the scopes and ins and outs of everything going on, that's really where the opportunities lie. And like my career really took off when the Tampa Bay Lightning saw me just posting videos of what I think about the team and what's going on. And then before you know it, I'm in studio. And I never thought that would have happened, but that's where life started for me because of social media.
It's crazy to see how much the sports media landscape has changed. Like even the last several years, it's changed a lot. And
Big time.
and Steve, I'll toss it over to you here. What do you got?
Oh, thanks, Colin. I appreciate that.
You got it.
Um, no, but Casey, you did mention how you said you were more of a football and a hockey background. I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
curious how you landed on baseball because, like, we were all broadcasters at Franklin Pierce, but I think we all have one sport that we did that we totally loved doing, but we did not have a single attachment to whatsoever. Mine was field hockey. I had nothing to do with field hockey. No idea what the rules are. I still don't know what the rules are. But I'm just curious, like, has your opinion on baseball changed? Would you say you're now a baseball person? Like, what has it done for you now? Like, what's
I feel like it's criminal to be in Boston and not be a baseball fan. So that pressure very much caught up with me, not gonna lie. But all jokes aside, funny enough, when I got here and I got involved with NESN, it was the Red Sox and the Red Sox Foundation that kind of like welcomed me into the fold. So I feel like that was part of the reason why I was like, okay, like let's do this baseball thing. Like I mentioned, my dad was a big baseball fan. He was actually being looked at by the Cincinnati Reds coming out of high school, and he chose to go into the military and thought that maybe the opportunity was still going to be waiting for him. So he was one of those people who was like, I could have been a baseball player. And that was something that he stressed to me and my sisters for so long. So there's always kind of been a tie to baseball, but just considering the fan base, the community, the historic nature of the Red Sox, I think it was just impossible not to become a baseball fan. Now, is there still so much research that I need to do if I'm being pulled on to do something for baseball? Yes, because if anybody thinks that hockey has its superstitions, weird nature, all of its things, baseball actually doubles that. And I never would have guessed that. That was probably one of the funniest things I learned last year preparing for the women's broadcast, because I was like, how are you guys more difficult than hockey? This is crazy. So I think because of all the intricacies that it has, it definitely like, I loved watching a game and challenging myself to see if I can still do the scoring. Alana Rizzo taught me how to do scoring for baseball, and like to graduate to putting in the code words and all these other things rather than the layman's terms of things. Like that's something that I enjoy doing. So like, yeah, I'll be watching tonight's game and honoring Alana by hopefully doing my due diligence in this proper scoring card. But you can call me a baseball fan for sure. Like I like to go in my own time to Fenway. I like to support this team, but it's the organization and the people that I've met more so.
That's good to hear. I mean, you got to be a baseball fan if you're with the Red Sox. You have to.
Yeah,
It's in
it
the
would
job
be
description. It
criminal.
says it right on the
This
bottom.
is the perfect time right now too.
True.
Exactly. And you know what, guys? I don't try to take credit for too much, but since I got to Boston, the Red Sox have figured something out. They made it to the playoffs last year.
True.
They
We really
had a
Okay.
big
appreciate it right
turnaround
now.
this year.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's
Yeah.
things happening. There's things happening.
Yeah.
So I like to think that maybe me being open to baseball helped with any of that. But no, it's cool. I mean, when you love sports, you love every aspect of it. So for me, I like challenging myself to learn something new and seeing how I can, see it on my own without asking for help and advice. But like I said, it's so hard to be in Boston and not completely love the Red Sox. And like every time I've gone to Fenway, every event, I just did the run to home base with the Red Sox Foundation and the home base program for the second year. And it's just like, you want to just be at Fenway after that. It's hard not to.
Unfortunately, we got a Yankees fan in here. That's
Yeah,
Mr.
we
Jonah
do.
Boye.
He's muted for a reason, by the way.
Yeah.
I was like, who is that? There's only two that haven't said anything, and it's Joe and Jonah. So
I mean, I'm a big
That's my
baseball
guess.
fan, so I'm always like I'm going to Fenway with Colin as well on Friday. So I'm just a guy who loves being around baseball. It's one of my favorite sports, but I'll hear all the slander, the talk. I'll accept it. It is what it is. So
at least you'll take the slander. That's the best part. Like,
yeah, and anytime I've been to Fenway,
They're
I
all
can say
there.
I've seen the Sox lose every time, so I could, I'll take that.
Oh, so you're the problem. Okay.
Yeah, you can
Yes.
you can ban him if you want.
Yeah.
Just
You're
ban
the
him from
solution,
Fenway.
Casey.
You
You're the
can-
You can
You
go
are-
back in 2028, Jonah. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Get the good
I don't
luck
want this
charm
guy
and
at
the bad luck
Fenway
charm.
anymore.
Yeah.
Not this year.
But so you did mention you wanted to challenge yourself and go outside. You said if you're comfortable, then you're doing something wrong. I'm curious, was there ever a moment where you thought like I can't do this, like I'm gonna give up, I'm gonna hang up the cleats, or did you just like no, you stuck it through the whole way and now
Oh,
I mean clearly you found a great gig for yourself. So I'm curious, what was like that journey, that path that led to this?
there were several moments where I was like, this is probably not it for me. That's for sure. Probably the most recent one within the last year, while we're on the topic of it, I thought I was going to puke the entire day of the women's broadcast for Red Sox, because again, it just felt like so much pressure. Like baseball wasn't my natural, I could break this down. And like, when I look at something, I naturally go to analytics, and I just like, it was way too overwhelming. So I didn't know how to be myself, but still deliver, well on air and be a part of something that was so historic and part of, one of the most notable franchises ever. So no joke, guys, I thought I was going to throw up until like 3 o'clock that day. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. And I just I constantly just remember reaching out to friends and family and being like, I feel like I'm going to screw this up, and I'm going to this is such a big honor and I don't want to screw it up. And it just, you learn how to take things moment by moment. And it was just like everything almost stood still. I remember the opening hit, and right after you're done with the opening hit, that first one's recorded, but the second one is live. And I was in the middle of saying crochet and Cora, and I think I flipped the two, and then you're just trying to tell yourself in the moment, that's fine. You don't know if everybody's going to catch it. You have to keep going. So that was a big growth point for me, because I had to learn how to work through so many discomforts, where typically if I'm nervous about something, I'm nervous, I get there, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, I love this. This is what I signed up for. But I had to keep working through it for the Red Sox broadcast. And then it wasn't until the end of the night I had to sprint from the field up to the studio to go sit with Natalie Nori and help her close out the show. And while I'm sitting there catching my breath, I was like, oh shit, I did this. Like we didn't make it through it. We actually were able to be present and be, and take on a new experience in totality throughout the night. So that was a big one. In terms of questioning my career and kind of getting through that kind of obstacle, I remember betting networks started reaching out to me because they realized I was an analytical person, and they didn't have anyone really helping with analysis for hockey. So I was like, oh, wait, I love the numbers for hockey. So I started working with betting companies to kind of help them curate how they would put out certain things for hockey bets so that, the NHL had more of a presence. And because of that work a couple years ago, 3 years ago, I want to say, then people started reaching out and looking at me as a hockey analyst. Well, that started to piss people off because I didn't grow up playing hockey. I can skate, but I'm not a hockey player. So then people were offended that the non-hockey player was being referred to as an analyst. And there was just so much backlash to where it made me so uncomfortable to kind of keep going. But I never falsely presented myself. I was just somebody who could see numbers, and I loved trying to explain those numbers to people. And I did my homework. I watched coaching seminars. And luckily, like I said, the Tampa Bay Lightning gave me so much access to learn. John Cooper never played hockey, and he would tell me stories about the guys that he met and just how to keep pushing down this path and don't put a label on yourself. So I had to learn how to work through those discomforts, because while people were putting a label on me, I wasn't putting a label on myself. I was just trying to share something that I was passionate about. And it got so intense at one point to where I was just like, maybe I should just be hands off with hockey. Like, forget this. I grew up in a football family, go back to football, like, forget about it. But every time I was ready to like hang it up, some other large opportunity would come out of the woodworks and be like, hey, we like how you do your storytelling for this. Would you mind doing so? And it went from being an ESPN radio to a CBS Sports, which I am now, consistent analyst with, to other people highly regarded in the hockey community reaching out and being like, we want you on here for this because we want your take the way that you do it. So sometimes I will say this industry really just kind of pulls you in different directions to challenge your identity. And you have to kind of be sure about like who you want to be and how you want that delivery to come across, because you don't want to keep changing to what everybody else is doing. A lot of people's situations are very short-lived. So I will say hockey's challenged me the most, but the Red Sox broadcast, I didn't think I was going to get through that at all.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting story. And before we give the Yankee fan privileges to unmute himself, I have one
Are
more
we giving
question
him
for
time?
you. Yeah, you're right. You can stay unmuted. I'm just curious. So, like, I feel like an underrated aspect of this job is like the traveling that you have to do. Like, how is the traveling for you? Because obviously, like, some jobs, like, they're constantly moving back and forth. Like, some are just sticking in one spot. Like, what is it like for you?
Oh my gosh, it's been twofold. Like when I lived in Florida, everything was very much more, what was around Florida. My biggest travels were hopping in the car and going down to Miami or driving up to Jacksonville, which I hate Jacksonville. But then like once you start doing more contract work, which is like, something where you guys are at in your career, you can offer, the way that you guys do interviews or create content, you can offer that to teams, you can offer it to networks. And then before you know it, you're flying out for certain events. So when I started my content company, I worked with the Vegas Golden Knights living in Florida. And for big events that they had circled on the calendar, I'd pack up and go out there for the week to make sure that I'm like tracking everything leading up to whatever event that I'm doing, getting content leading up to it and stuff. So like the travel aspect changed depending on how many things I signed up for. Recently, like with NESN, everything was here on the ground. And so like when the Bruins were away and stuff, it was just more so the Hockey Hub episodes. So it was way less travel this past year. But before that, there was certain events throughout the year, like the bigger matchups, the bigger games, anything that I was contractually obligated to do, I'd probably be flying out a week prior. The biggest learning curve is trusting your packing skills. I grew up a military brat and I thought that I was like the most phenomenal packer. And then I learned I'm horrible at packing and I tend to always leave out something very important and stuff. And like when you're going with equipment and everything, like having your equipment bag outside of your other bag. So the traveling part's fun. You get to see different parts of the country, different parts of the world. You get to learn how to report on the fly because you're not in the comfort of your studio, your setup, everything that you need. You're always going into somebody else's situation and you have to be able to be professional with what they have in that moment. Like I've gotten to places like Vegas and the lighting situation's a mess. They don't have the right mics. Sometimes they're looking to you to have things that they never vocalized that they needed. And sometimes you have to be quick on the fly of how you're going to do things. So always carry a Bluetooth microphone, gentlemen, if there's advice that I have on that part, because it connects to a phone. Your phone gives you all the content you need. And before you know it, you're at least still doing your job and you look more prepared than anything else, because even some of the top networks I've worked with have had stinks that have happened in the fly of the moment. And we've at least been able to pivot. So that's something else. Like maybe always have an idea of how you could pivot in a situation, because that gets you jobs and that keeps you frame of mind for any projects that people have coming up after the fact. And it's actually really cool when you get that kind of respect from people that they're like, oh yeah, you're always prepared.
Nice. I mean, traveling is definitely something that I feel like a lot of people are like scared to do when it like comes down to it. But it seems like you haven't really had to go on a plane at all, unless you have and just haven't said it yet. But Jonah, I will let you
Not in the
unmute
past
yourself
year.
now. Not in the past. Okay, Jonah, you can unmute yourself now. I'll let you go.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a piece that you mentioned earlier about kind of being yourself and finding like the genuine yourself on the air or even being in the industry. But you also mentioned Alana Rizzo a bunch of times, and I was curious for you especially, who's been like someone that you've looked up to either in the sports industry field or just someone in your personal life that has really pushed you to be the person you are when you work?
Oh my gosh, this is a nice list, I will say. So I probably three people probably come to mind. Growing up, I always thought that I'd go into public relations, and then especially when my brother was being looked at for football, he had 27 D1 offers, and we were having coaches come by the house to try to woo him and stuff. And I became very protective because I saw just kind of like how they approach athletes, how they don't media train athletes, how the spotlight changes, how the privilege changes, especially when you're being heavily pursued. So I thought I was going into public relations. And my brother's freshman year at FSU, I went to go visit him, and his friends kidnapped me at 3 o'clock in the morning and dragged me to college game day. I didn't know college game day existed. And that was the first time I saw Erin Andrews. Erin Andrews went to University of Florida. She worked for the Tampa Bay Lightning, got fired from the Tampa Bay Lightning, but was still able to make a name for herself because she knew how she wanted to deliver, how she wanted to connect with fans, what her interview style was going to be with coaches and players and stuff. So I heavily looked up to her, as basic or common as that might be a name to say, but being from the same area in Florida and stuff, and knowing people that were a part of the beginning of her journey, shout out to Rock Riley, I was able to kind of get a good feeling for the fact that this is such an unstable, exciting, passionate industry. And just like seeing how when you first think Erin Andrews, you think somebody who's top of the top when it comes to sports broadcasting, but she had to overcome so much. That's where I learned the whole discomfort thing, because everything she thought was her strong suit was an opportunity that she was pushed out of. And then she had to kind of continue to fight for the next opportunity, but she did it without trying to reinvent herself or be something that she's not. So she's a big one. And then the next one I would say is that I was covering the Tampa Bay Bucks for a few years, and I had the opportunity to work with John Ledyard, and Trevor Sikkema had just left, and he was a huge guy at PFF, fantastic football mind. And so I just learned a lot from them. But to have two highly regarded guys in the football world actually give a crap about my opinion and constantly remind me, again, no matter the situation, how do you want to connect with fans? What do you want your impact to be when you talk to players and coaches? And it kind of resonated the same message that I found so inspiring from Erin Andrews. So Erin Andrews, John Ledyard, Trevor Sikkema, Alana, I learned a lot from, because she's somebody else that just, no matter how frustrated I would be over the course of the year from meeting her. And I started going through a lot of different things when I first met Alana, because that whole digital linear thing that I told you guys about earlier, well, some networks are starting to lean towards women, especially that have big followings. And they're almost taking this, I hate to say, shortcut of like hiring these big followings and these friendly faces to do the work rather than do the work. So then it kind of made me question my approach to this industry and if something needs to change. And then that's when I remember Erin Andrews wouldn't have done it. John and Trevor would never support this. And Alana Rizzo was like, hell no, dude. You stay you, and you let all that other stuff fall off, because it's short-lived, and it really is. Because if people are getting free content from these large followings and the people that sexualize their content or do these other things, they're not going to load up to a network to watch that, because that content doesn't translate to TV rights. You know what I mean? So Alana was a huge advocate for me not changing anything. Doesn't matter if the job opportunity, the job market, or the conversations change. Do not change anything. And she actually made me feel really supported in how far I've come, the work that I've put out, the response that I get, and the fans that I had an opportunity to connect with through NESN and stuff. Even they were supportive of the fact of like, don't change a thing. So those would probably be the top people that I look up to. And I mean, luckily I have great support from my parents. I mean, my mom is such a badass, so I have a chance to kind of pull on her a lot too when I get uncomfortable. And the discomfort that I'm living in, guys, is remembering to not change myself because of the things that are changing around me, because these networks are really just kind of trying to figure out what's going to stick right now. So you don't want to turn into something else that's not going to be sustainable, you know what I mean, or have an actual long-term opportunity at the end.
Yeah, I mean, everyone I think is very aware of Erin Andrews, how amazing she is. But I mean, I love that little perspective, though. I mean, she got fired, and then you're saying she knew what she wanted to do, she stuck to it, and I think that's a really good, characteristic a lot of people don't really understand. I mean, there's a lot of failure in our industry, and I kind of wanted to ask you as well, what's something that's happened in your career that's something that you failed at but have really learned from?
I I mean, like you said, there's so much failure in this. So I think some of the big parts is like when you first approach a situation, like I remember kind of some of the first opportunities I had with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I felt like, holy crap, I didn't really do that well, or I didn't live up to the expectation of what they brought me in to do. And it makes you so scared that you're going to lose 1,000 opportunities after that failed one. But I think what I've learned from failure is how to not only ask for feedback, but how to actually take in feedback. And you'll learn that while people are telling you something about yourself, you kind of still have to take it in grains, because remember, some people are going with the trends of the world. So they're going to try to tell you feedback based off of what's current versus what's more sustainable. So I think in those failures, you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn what parts of yourself are non-negotiable. That was something that I had to learn over the past couple of years. What are parts of my personality? What are parts of the work that I enjoy doing that are non-negotiable? Because some of the feedback is really just ever changing. And depending on what people are looking for, this executive might tell you this, and somebody in the exact position somewhere else might tell you the complete opposite. So really kind of having a feel for yourself is the most important. But I mean, I flubbed my first time in studio with the Lightning, and I'll never forget it because it traumatized me to my core. But one of the breakdowns that we had, we were playing the Carolina Hurricanes, and it was, I still can't say his name, Trauma, but I'm Kachekov. They had 3 different variations of it, and it was just like, then I realized when I get nervous, I speed things up, which can flub up a pronunciation. So through that failure, I had to learn slowing things down actually doesn't translate as slow on air. It translates in a very normal cadence, and you're being more breathy and you're taking your time with something. So like through that failure, I learned how to change my cadence. I learned how to apologize without coming off stupid if a name, situation takes place, because there's a lot of difficult names in hockey. And then other failures that kind of just led to different situations, like I said, was just more so learning about myself and learning about my non-negotiables. Like if I have a quirky trait about myself, I'm not going to suppress that for an opportunity. I'm just going to know that that opportunity is not for me in a way. So there's that. And then one of the biggest things that kind of gets associated with failure and is a big pill to swallow in this industry is like, if your contract doesn't get renewed, you don't want to associate that with rejection, because sometimes it's not a you thing. It's what's that company looking for in that moment? Where are they trying to free up finances? Like there's so many decisions that have nothing to do with you. So it's like not taking that personally and making it a you problem, and still staying motivated, still staying encouraged. Like if there's one thing that I could say is that like no matter what this industry tells you about yourself, like make sure there's something that still keeps you fired up. Like every time I open a hockey book and learn something different when I watch the game, and I'm like, oh crap, look at what I've learned and pieced together, like that still fires me up. And that has nothing to do with job opportunities, people, fans, anything outside of that just direct passion. And that helps me get past every failure, every no, every rejection, every we'll get back to you kind of thing, because I know what I'm still excited about. And nowadays we have this platform called social media where we can still share that, and it might open a door somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points. I mean, 'cause especially you've been in the industry for longer than we have. I mean, we're barely starting to get our foot in the door. So it's definitely, I think, something that younger, let's say, aspiring people want to be on air or even in the sport industry. It's a part of life that we're still not really acclimated to. So it's kind of feeling out how the industry really works. I mean, especially for us four, I mean, when we were first learning about more so the industry in our classes, seeing like, oh man, this is going to be really tough. There's so many great people in this industry, and just kind of accepting, failure is a great learning opportunity. And that's kind of what I see for, I think, a lot of younger people. It's definitely a thing they need to grow with. But I love hearing the perspective from people who have been in the industry and just what their lessons have taught them. So I really do appreciate hearing that perspective from you as well.
Yeah, it's been 10 years. And I know it's tougher these days too, because again, we kind of feel like instant gratification is right there. Instant gratification is within reach. And when you don't get responses, when you don't get validation, when you don't get any of that stuff, your mind spirals to everything you're doing wrong. But it's just like this industry is just so what is now. that's something that you always have to remind yourself, what is now? And do I fit the now? And if I don't fit the now, that doesn't mean that I don't have a place or a space in this, because that's why I think really showing your personality, that gets you jobs. It takes one executive to feel connected to you and be like, no, doesn't matter what anybody else says, this is the person, or these are the people for this job, for this project, for this opportunity, for this 3-year contract. So it's like, as frustrating as it is, that's probably my biggest soapbox, to be like, you can't give up, because you never know which person is going to gravitate to you that's the decision maker of something. And like, the good news is there's way more projects now than there ever used to be. There's way more shows. And I think the oversaturation can make people feel nervous, because it can make you feel like you said, there's so many great people. How's there room for me? But that's the thing. There's so many shows. There's so many projects. There's so many opportunities because of now the social side of things, that you don't want to discount yourself from being a fit, because your specific personality, quirk, weirdness, delivery, whatever the case may be, might be exactly what somebody's looking for. And I've seen that change before my eyes. I mean, I've been a part of networks where they've gone through 3 different executives, one that loved me, one that was like, like she's good, but there's just something. And then somebody else that was like, she's way too analytical. We don't do analytics here at all. And I'm just like, ouch. And I didn't know if I needed to change me. But if you're trying to change yourself for each individual idea and plan and person, you're never going to feel balanced. And this industry is already so chaotic. Like, the last thing you want to do is have no clue who you are in the middle of all of it. So just because something isn't instant doesn't mean that the opportunity is not there. I think the oversaturation is actually a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's any opportunity out there, and just said, just the right moment could fall, and then it works out perfectly, just staying true to who you are. So I really do, and I really like hearing that from someone. I mean, obviously we talked about failure, so I mean, that's just a huge thing, I think, for, especially like I said, just the younger version or younger people moving into this industry, kind of learning more about it. So, Joe, back
Embrace
to you.
Yeah, I've really liked the conversation talking about being yourself, and also like you going into something uncomfortable, like you've never been really a baseball person before, and you go into that broadcast and you have like this like frog in your throat and you don't know what to do with it, but you got to push through, and then like learning how to pack again for something like this. I think, to me, that was making me think of like the importance of preparation in this industry. And I just wanted to see, like, what is your preparation routine like, and how do you prepare for certain situations to ensure that you're comfortable being in an uncomfortable spot and you can highlight yourself to the best of your ability?
So I don't know if this is a good thing. Everybody take it with a grain, but I'm kind of a natural over preparer. And I've become more of an over preparer in the past 3 years because, for instance, if I'm getting ready to go on and do a hit with, like, let's say CBS or ESPN per se, depending on the time block of that segment and depending on the pace of the conversation and where things go, you'll realize that sometimes the conversation can go completely in a different direction. And so sometimes I always try to make sure that I have enough information to go in so many different directions. So kind of over preparing for situations, I feel like helps, but you don't want to do it to a point where you're in your head and you don't show your personality. So my preparation for anything, whether it's coming on as an analyst, coming on as a guest, or sitting in the seat as the host, or being the sideline reporter, is I will have, let's say I do everything on a notebook and then I translate it into my notes pad on my laptop so that I have it on my phone. But I'll do separate categories of like the need to knows. And that'll be the information that I go into. Need to know about these players, these coaches, this situation. And then the next bar will be, what would I want to learn as a fan? And then there's information or storylines, anything around that topic. I'll just find anything of interest that, could be something that not everybody knows about. So I always kind of try to have the fun stuff as well as the specific stuff all right there. And I'll kind of go over it for days leading up to the situation. And then a lot of times I leave my notes behind because I want it to be an authentic delivery of what comes to mind. I don't want to sit there and be robotically going through a situation. So that's a lot of my prep style, because I learned that when I got to work with a up and coming network back in Florida when I first started my career, and we were doing a lot of things on the fly, and I just never felt prepared, and I never felt like I could go in different directions with the conversation. I felt like I knew what I knew, and if we didn't stay on track with this, like, where were we going? So just kind of really expanding your horizons with your research and stuff. And like, so now when I talk about a situation, good example coming up, people want to know my thoughts on JJ Paterka because I thought he was getting too much heat for past situations. Well, I've come to learn that JJ is very well respected in Germany. Prospects actually look up to him. That speaks to the content of character. And I can give examples to flood that, as well as his analytics and how he might fit into the system, and so on and so forth. So I feel like creating a research game plan, or a research process to where it really just sits with you, the information that you're learning, so that you can have a natural delivery of it. Because again, everything comes back to creating a space for people to get to know your personality and fall in love with you, the person, versus just the work. Because if you have people just tracking your work, you're going to lose fans, you're going to lose people, and you want them to go with you stride by stride of what this industry might throw your way. So I hope that answered the question. But yeah, I just turned into more of an over preparer.
Yeah, no, that's great. I for me, preparation is one of those things that I feel like it kind of gives you confidence as a broadcaster going into a situation, because you all of a sudden kind of know everything about it when maybe you didn't know before. I know, Steve, you were talking about like you were thrown into field hockey like just randomly at one point.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it did happen.
You had to prepare to learn the rules of the sport, and then you fell in love with it as you did it. I think that's like so awesome. But I like that you brought up the point of like over preparing is great, because you want to have as much information as possible to be able to pull, depending on the situation. But I liked the addition of don't do it to the point where you lose yourself in the process and you feel like you have to recite the numbers that you've written. I found it really interesting. Like, you just write this all out on a notebook, but you leave it behind, and you're like, no, I got it all out on a piece of paper, and now it's in my head. So just how do you strike that like balance mentally? Like, once you have that written down, I feel like I'd want to take the notebook with me just as a comfort, but how do you kind of bravely leave that behind and say, you know what, I got this. I have done the preparation, and now I could do this. Like, how do you mentally go forward with that?
I guess it's maybe putting a timeline on the over preparation. Cause like I said, days leading up to it, that's when I'm really just kind of in the thick of it. Like, I know that I have a pod on Friday. I started doing my research on Monday. I do all the heavy stuff on the front end of things, because, and then something else that I'll do as I get closer to a coverage or anything that I'm doing is just kind of silently like recite some of the notes to myself. Like, I kind of just did it with you guys in a casual conversation, and that reminds me like, oh wait, everything that I've done Monday and Tuesday is still sitting with me here on Wednesday, and it was very natural because I gave it time to just kind of sit with me. So it's just, that's, I guess, we're somewhere along the line of preparation is just like really making time for your preparation style. So I know that I need a couple of days. Now, granted, you don't always get that. You get thrown into some things. And when I get thrown into a situation, it really is like, what are the key things that I need to connect the fans to the team about? And you can have fun with it without being so surgical. Like, I think I had to remember that. So like, because I'm an over preparer and I don't want to come off robotic, I have to kind of separate from my notes right before a coverage so that I don't go into robot mode. And like, I'll have the notebook in my bag and stuff, but it's just, again, it's kind of just trusting the repetition. So as you're doing the research, I'll like at night, I'll go back through all of my notes or whatever. And then first thing in the morning, once I start getting on with my day, I'll just kind of process like what stuck with me, kind of thing. And if there's something that I feel like I really want to get a point across on, then like maybe I'll kind of go back to the repetition of that. But I'm looking at the research, I'm writing it down, and then I'm typing it in my notes. So I have almost two ways of kind of reciting and remembering these things before I decide like, all right, now it's just whatever stuck, whatever didn't. And like, learning that helps too, because like I said, for the moments that you kind of get thrusted into something, you don't realize what just comes to you naturally. So it's honestly just trusting yourself and trusting how you process information and creating a style that works for you. If that's looking at things, if that's watching videos, whatever that is, you kind of have to find that so that you realize that as you grow in your career as a broadcaster, people are going to ask you about things from like 5 years ago that you're not prepared for. But because of your process, at some point you're just like, oh, give me a minute. Oh, there we go. It was this, and this, and all of this information just kind of comes back to you naturally. So I kind of took it back to a schooling approach in a way, but it helps. And at least at that point, I'm having a conversation. I'm not talking at people about what's going on. I'm talking to them, and it's more fluid and it's more natural. And honestly, it's a lot more fun that way too, because you feel like, again, your personalities come through and you're doing something that you love. You're not putting on a face. Because you feel when you put on a face for a broadcast and you walk away and you're like, that was okay, but I wasn't me.
Right. I felt like that, like when I started out. It's like you try and over prepare, and then I kind of lose myself in the process. But over time, you get more comfortable, and then I just like that, being able to get to the point where you trust yourself. Like, I've done the research, I've done the work, and now I can take that and have it amplify my personality to make it fun for not only myself, but those watching and listening. So
And it takes time. Yeah. It took walking away from that notebook a few times to be like, this is psychotic. What am I doing? But it naturally just became like a thing. And now it's my rhythm. Like, I have my notebook around me, but I'll take a quick glance off on it and just, you got to go into it. But learning to trust yourself is the big thing, but just not rushing it either.
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective. Thank you. I'll toss it back to Colin. I know he's got a couple more questions.
I mean, we keep mentioning hockey throughout this episode, and I feel like we're dying to talk about it, and we got the expert here. So, and you mentioned JJ Peterka. I'm a big fan of him. I'm really excited to see him in Boston. Yes. So, just wanted to get your thoughts on your thoughts on the offseason and the Bruins going into this next season.
Yeah, I feel like. And it's so funny, too, because coming into this as a new Bostonian, one would say, I understand all the old wounds that Bruins fans go through. And when management says that they're going to, really bat for the fences here, that you're expecting all of these flashy, sexy moves. But I think Peterka was just enough, especially if you weren't going to move on from Azaka. And I think the fact that in the rumor mill, with Casey Middlestad's name being so safe, if they were going to push for someone else that was going to fit a top 6 role, then his name would have had to be kicked around. So I feel like they showed you exactly how much movement they were willing to do. And I remember last year when I found out Peterka was going to be made available, I really thought he'd be a fit with the Bruins, especially considering the Marco Sturm situation, and not because of the German connection and all the other things that people want to get hung up on. It's Marco Sturm's coaching style. And I think that people really lose sight of the fact that players really thrive under certain coaching styles. It's not just system, it's how the coach can paint out that system and give you confidence in that system. And I think Sturm is the right fit for that. So with Peterka, I was a big fan of the move because I wanted it last year, but I think that it's kind of cool that he was able to go through Utah, heavy checking system, have to be defensively responsible first. So he learned the basis of what this system is going to ask him of. But Bruins fans have to be realistic. You can't be a heavy defensive team and every player have a strong two-way game and you're going to be this offensive machine. 1 and 2 are not the same. The minute that Pasta started getting more defensively responsible, he was a turnover machine. He lost physical battles because that's not his natural state. So I think that maybe this will open things up for people to realize some offensive players just need to be offensive players. And their shift has to determine whether or not they're going to be on the ice as a liability versus a productive member on the line at that time. And I think that Peterka is going to help kind of open and shed a light on that and also revitalize his career because he didn't like his numbers in Utah. So that move I was on board with. I know people are excited about Connor Clifton's return, but I think I've also learned that Boston loves a good return story or reuniting story. And I'm on board for it to a certain degree, but I think that I thought there was going to be more of a focus on how the back end was going to shape up. I think Charlie McAvoy is awesome, but I also think he's very emotional. So I think I think that they should have gone through a bigger veteran, stable defensive defenseman presence back there versus the return of Connor Clifton, the guy from the Rangers, his name's escaping me right now, and kind of figure out a way to reset the back end. If you're going to keep Mason Lohrei, then he needs to play on his natural side. I think that they've put too much on him as a young guy to not only play on his offside, but then he jumped up in minutes a year ago, and then a lot of things have shifted in his play to where he hasn't had any stability. And I think he showed flashes of being able to do well, but they didn't bring in stability to kind of allow him to grow into himself. And I think that they needed a bigger presence back there. And I don't think that they're going to be really naming a captain anytime soon either. So I think that a stable veteran, really, let's say seasoned defensive defenseman would have probably helped level them up a bit. So I like the movement. I like the guys that they've kept for the most part, but I'll be intrigued to see how they compete because the Atlantic, like we've said for the past 5 years, only got stronger across the board. And like, you're now kind of throwing out a hope float that Peterka is going to be a producer. David Pasternak's going to get back to being a scorer versus an assist guy. And that they're just going to fall into this rhythm to be competitors versus what they did last year.
I mean, like you mentioned, I think the blue line is still a big question mark. I don't think Connor
didn't do
Clifton
enough.
solves a lot of their issues, and he wasn't really the greatest in Boston. And then
I tried not to judge the guy because I didn't really know him, but I wasn't wooed by it. I needed to be wooed on the blue line, not the top six.
I agree. I think they needed a bigger veteran presence to help them, especially with a young decor, someone to guide Mason Lohrei. I'm still holding out hope that he can turn into what we wanted, but at the same time, it's very hard to keep believing in Mason Lohrei. Yeah, we're not the biggest fans.
Mason Lohrei and I don't get along. He doesn't know who I am, but I don't like him.
I'm still going to hold out hope.
He doesn't know me, but I don't like him.
No, you got to give him a chance.
I've tried. That Sabre series was so hard to watch.
This is the make or break year for him, I think.
He was such a traffic cone.
This is it.
He was bullied. He was so bullied in the series, and it was hard to watch. But then I flashed back to wow, Mason Lohrei could be a really good defenseman. Look at what he did versus the Devils. I think it was every time they played them as well. But he was just he was all over them. He was coming up strong with defensive plays, had the stronger stick in battles. I was impressed. I think that was the first time I saw him look like a defensive player versus this offensive defenseman that we like doing. And then Buffalo hit, and I was just oh my God. But then he was constantly forced to play on his offside, which I don't think is natural for him. Last year, it was the amount of minutes, which you feel like you have sea legs. So he couldn't keep up with chasing anybody down. And then you have more man-on-man responsibility in this system this year. And you're already trying to work through the fatigue that you dealt with last year. So I just feel like he hasn't been guided at all. And they're just, rather than giving it time, or giving him real direction, or giving him the proper kind of partner. They've screwed him over on the guys that they've paired him with, honestly. They've either handicapped him by putting him with somebody that's going to do all the work, which you can't do that to a young player, or he's got the majority of the responsibility while he's trying to figure it out. So I feel like they needed to bring in a proper pairing for him, especially because they don't look like they were going to move on from him. I can't imagine that there wasn't 5 teams that would have offered good money for Mason Lohrei in this offseason, especially with the direction that a lot of teams are getting younger and the way that they're paying young players, how they're trusting young players. If you just wanted a spirited offensive defenseman that's going to rip it from the left circle, Mason Lohrei could have picked up some decent money for you. So that tells me that there's something we're not seeing, but I can be ever the optimist sometimes. But I haven't given up on Mason Lohrei. I won't do it yet. I got to get through this season first.
I agree. I'll give him this year, and then after that,
Steven, be nice to him.
See what happens.
He needs everybody on board. He needs everybody on board.
He needs a lot of positive reinforcement, which I don't think he's getting from Bostonian anytime soon, unfortunately.
No. Between Jordan Harris and all the other things, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Mason sideline quite a bit this season. I think that they'll quietly do that. They'll try to keep him healthy and then maybe move on from him next year. So what they did defense-wise just doesn't make sense. So it just sounds like they're trying to do a low-key ghosting situation to one of these guys, and Mason's the name that comes to mind. Slowly separating from him.
They're going to send him to the Shadow Realm this year, it sounds like. That's what the Red Sox did with Yoshida a year ago, I think.
Yep. Yeah, Mason doesn't know it yet, but he's being broken up with, just very slowly, delicately, kindly, if one wants to call it kindness, but it's pretty crazy. I wanted them to do so much more back there, and I know nobody's I'm trying to think. It was the Oilers that had a proper defenseman available that they just kind of shivved on, and then I think Trouba would have been fine. Honestly, he fits the physical bill of what they're looking for, and I think his intimidating pass does enough for him, and he was less of a liability with the Ducks also. So I feel like they really missed out on some opportunities, and then considering some of the contracts that they took on as well, and with the 5% increase to the cap, they could have finessed something else out there, but I don't know why it didn't take place. So we'll see.
I mean, I would have loved Trouba, honestly. I think that would have been a nice addition to that blue
I was
line,
ready for
especially
it.
at a discount. I think that would have been great. But Steve, we'll go to you here. What do you got?
Oh, thanks, Colin, once again. So we did talk about you and mispronouncing words on air. I would tell
Yeah.
you the words, but I would also mispronounce it, and then I'd make myself look silly. But I'm just curious: is there another what's your most embarrassing moment on air that you said it or you did it and you're like, uh-oh.
Oh man! Besides mispronouncing words,
Besides mispronouncing words.
I thought you had a list of all the words I mispronounced.
No. It was just the two that you mentioned. I'm not gonna say it because I again am gonna mess it up.
I was really gonna be mortified. Another embarrassing moment on air. You know, a funny one that tends to happen sometimes. This probably fits in the over preparation bubble. Is somebody will ask you something, and in your brain, you're going like item by item of how you prepared for something, but like you completely missed the question that they asked you, so you're not even answering it. You're just completely off on a whole nother tangent. That's a tough one to look back on and be like, damn it, I knew the answer to that question, I just never got there because my brain was so far over here. Another one is when you have to pivot very quickly. So like your producer will jump into your ear and be like, hey, we have to change up this really fast. And they're trying to tell you what it is that they're changing. Like, we're going to actually throw to this package. Make sure you say this, 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 and this. And you almost black out sometimes because you're still in the middle of talking. You're getting fed directions. And this is all getting ready to go down within 30 to 45 seconds time. So there's times where like you just start, the words are not connecting at all, and you know that you're making zero sense, but you're just trying to get to this package that they just teed you up for. And in the midst of that, you probably pronounced something wrong, you probably called something the wrong name, and then you're trying to give it this like decorated, everybody go watch this coming up next thing, and you botched it. Luckily I haven't done that too many times, but I could properly remember a time that happened because we had a special Red Sox show that we were doing leading into the Red Sox pregame with TC and them. And it would be like, we didn't know who the pitcher was leading up to it. And so they would be like, it could be Tolle, it could be Early, standby. And then it's like, we've got a package of Early and Tolle talking during batting practice earlier. Make sure you describe the fact that, you know, they're changed out their glove or something like that. And then before you know it, you're speaking Spanglish. You're like, oh, coming up, we're going to take a look at two young pitchers that you're excited to see. And now you're defaulting to just very vague descriptions because you have no idea what they just said in your ear. And then you'll be like, you'll say the wrong name and you'll be like, it's Bayo and Tully coming up next. And it's like, no, it's not. And your producer's telling you wrong. And you're like, well, shit, now we're past it. Like, I can't go back and fix it. So sometimes it's the culmination of taking direction while you're still in the middle of doing what you're doing. But usually it's just like, it just changes your cadence. It changes your words. And then after the fact, you're like, what came out of my mouth? That was so dumb. That was really, really dumb. And that's usually an embarrassing moment that hits you for a minute and then you get past it. Like me, if a clip goes up or if I can clip it and throw it up and be like, don't know what this gibberish was, but here's what I was trying to say, I'll correct it and call myself out because you learn to stop caring so much because it's going to happen. Even I've watched the people that I idolize in this industry do it because there's just so many different things happening at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely done that. I actually did it with Colin one time. Colin was the play-by-play, and I was the color. And it was like a very late baseball game. So, like, the lights are on in the press box. I could see myself in the reflection of the glass. So I'm kind of just zoning out into nothing. And I don't even know, to this day, I don't know what Colin asked me, but it was not the right answer.
I probably don't remember either. So.
It was not.
Yeah.
It was the longest second inning ever. And it was we were already up by 10 runs. It was against St. Rose, I believe. It was oh man, it was bad. I was just I said an answer and I looked down at my notes and I was like, that's not what
sometimes
that's not what he wanted.
There's no explanation either. There's zero explanation. I can remember I had to fill in on 310 to left as a host. which was NESN's baseball Red Sox podcast. And it was with Lenny DiNardo, which like he's such a personality, right? So I didn't feel like I had to do too much. And then we get through the first two segments and they're like, hey, we've got to do a breakdown of some update with crochet, or like ask Lenny about his like how he's trying to branch out of his arsenal of X, Y, and Z. And I didn't catch what was said. I don't know what I said to Lenny, and before you know it, he just burst out into a fit of laughter. I'm sitting there mortified because I'm like, did I say something funny, or did I say something wrong, or did I do both? I have no clue what just happened. And by the time that he gets himself composed, I was like, Lenny, what was that? And he goes, honestly, I don't know. And then I lost my train of thought. So we just lost the entire segment because both of us just like blacked out in that moment and couldn't get ourselves to come back. So we had to go do an early commercial break. And Lenny was like, I don't know if it was just like seeing you work through that made me laugh, but like it wasn't anything bad. And I was like, I don't know where to go from here. I don't know how to come back. So sometimes you just got to let it happen and then circle back after the fact and be like, all right, well, Lenny has a giggling disease. We're going to get back to the crochet conversation, whatever. So like, again, those moments though, like they force you to be yourself. So as terrifying as they are, because of course the internet is going to tell you how dumb you are, how, ridiculous, how you don't belong here, how you couldn't say this. So how do you have this job? The internet's going to dictate all these things. And you really learn how unserious it is, because it's just like, nobody could do what you're doing. Nobody could sit there and listen to somebody talking in your head while you're talking, processing your notes, processing what somebody else across from you is saying at the same time. Like, you're compartmentalizing so many different things and trying to do it with this smooth delivery, not look like you're about to throw up. Like, nobody could really do it until you get through the repetition of it. And then you just learn how to have fun with it. And I think that's probably the best part. And kind of when you realize that, you're settling into this career, when you can have those moments and just kind of like laugh at it and whatnot. Like, I've had stuff where I've spat off the wrong stats for a player. Like, I had it memorized to a core, but I didn't realize that my co-host changed the person. So again, just overcommitted to memory on certain things can be dangerous, rather than just like, I know what I know, trust it and go with it. But those are things from before I figured out my process.
That's great. But so I asked you the most embarrassing. Obviously, I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. What was like a moment that you had? It could be in high school, college, recently, Bruins, where you felt like it was like the best moment. Like you like knew, like, it's like, all right, I'm doing the right thing with myself. Like, this is what I wanted to do. Like, like what's a moment that really made you reflect that this is what you wanted to do?
Let's see. Honestly, it may have been when I got a chance to be in studio with the Lightning. That was a big one for me, because growing up in Tampa Bay, like you hear players say it all the time, but there's no call better than the hometown call. And like, as nervous as I was, like, to even get a chance to do that again, like, I have no background tying me to hockey. Like, I don't have the wonder story of the uncle, the dad, the brother, the Hall of Famer, none of that. I'm just a girl that fell in love with a sport, and luckily I had a chance to be around it. So like, that aha moment for me was not only getting the call from them, but I didn't even realize the magnitude of the opportunity. Like, I remember reading what they were asking me to do, but it didn't fully hit until it was like, oh, I'm mic'd up. My face is about to be on the Jumbotron in the arena that I've grown up going to since I was 8 years old. And then at that time it was like, okay, if I can do this, then like there's a space for me here. And like, this is something that I want to fight for. And honestly, that opportunity turned into the next big opportunity, being asked to talk about hockey on ESPN radio. And I'll never forget, my agent called me after that and was like, they loved your hit. Like, they would consider you hopping on First Take or Get Up to like, do a hockey conversation, because those aren't hockey people. And people felt like they learned from you while they were also kind of getting to know you. So those were the two biggest moments in my career where I was just like, yeah, I'm going to keep going with this. And like I said, weirdly, timing wise, it was on the back end of me being like, I'm exhausted. I'm contracted out with 5 different people. I'm doing so much grunt work. And I've always told the classes and people that I've talked to, like, there's so much glam in the grunt work if you're not just fixated on, the grunt work of it. Like, everybody's doing an excessive amount of work and preparation and trying to prove themselves and trying to appeal to people, networks, decision makers, all of these things. So it was those big moments where I was just kind of like, okay, regardless of how hectic this is, how tired I am, and how frustrated I might be, like, being able to be in front of the home crowd, nothing can beat that. And then being somebody who's regarded in a respectable manner on a platform such as ESPN, for let alone hockey of all sports, was probably my second greatest honor.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, everyone has to have that moment where it's like, this is what I want to do. I'm doing the right thing. This makes me feel good about myself. Is the biggest hype man is yourself. You got to hype yourself up.
Every time.
Like you said, the haters aren't. The haters aren't going to do that.
Oh, trust me. And then the blind side that comes in, gentlemen, when you realize just how low people will go. And like, it could be so left field sometimes that it's just like, I remember an announcement for getting sidelined for a project, and somebody was like, they were really hell-bent on trying to prove that I'm a bimbo, and I was just like, where did you come from with this? You don't see me connected to yeah, I have no pictures, no videos out there. I'm not tied to any players or coaches. Like, you can dig as deep as you want and put me on a lie detector machine. You're not going to find anything. But this guy was so adamant to go on Twitter every day and being like, this bimbo this bimbo that. It was actually leading up to the Red Sox broadcast, and I was like, why is he so hell-bent on me being a bimbo? It's just so strange. But you got to let people ride. Somebody hated my teeth. They said I still had vampire teeth, and that was a weird thing for an adult to have. And I was like, I think all adults have 4 canines, and you can shave them down or you can leave them, but that's fine. Like, I have never dissected myself more, because the things that people see and like fixate on, it's just so strange. And like I said, you have the one little flub, or last year I think hockey decided, because of the Kachuk brothers, God love them, they made the one comment about how they don't like women saying men's nicknames or hockey players' nicknames. And I'm thinking to myself, I get it. No boys club loves when you try to invade on, the rituals that make the men. But did you ever think that I can't pronounce his name, so I need his nickname to get through my job? Not because I want to be his friend or one of the boys, because I got to get through this situation. So that was another thing. Like, do I still continue to go through with this? And I did. I kept saying nicknames on air and stuff. And like, some people tried to like go for the jugular, and other people were like, this is so cute. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I got to get through this and do my job. So it's just crazy. The internet's always going to find something. Even on the days that you are riding the high of absolutely killing it, somebody is going to try to make you feel stupid about it. And you just got to be like, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny you mentioned like the vampire teeth, because I was actually at the dentist like a month ago. I like just found out. Yeah, I think so. No one's ever commented on them though. I just found out that like K9 is like a word. It's not like the letter K and 9 next to each other. I thought they like labeled my teeth with numbers and letters, but it's just not true. I like just found that out. I never knew that.
Honestly, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for
of course.
braving that one. Yes, it's more than a canine unit. That's how we see it.
Yeah, right. Actually... That's what I'm like. Oh, shit! I got canines. That's cool. But no, I don't.
Nope. It's all in the dog family. Dogs, wolves, all that jazz. But canine teeth, they're your sharp teeth. Everybody has them. But this man sent me down a Google research spiral. I've never learned so much about teeth in my life, because I was like, wait a minute, is this a problem? And then my family's like, you're stupid. You just fell into the trap of like all traps for no reason. And I was like, thank you. That's where siblings are helpful. They keep you honest. They're really quick to tell you how dumb you are. And then you're like, oh, that's fine. Like, we can move on from this one after my sibling just told me that I fell for the dumbest of situations. But you kind of start to get a high off of it too, or like, you learn how to smooth it over. Like, I had a guy who would always tweet like, women do not belong in sports. And like, I would jokingly be like, all right, talk to me. Where's this coming from? Like, I play the therapist on some of the tweets, and it turns out to be kind of funny. And like, now I'm like friends with this weirdo online. Like, I'll never forget, his tag is Joe from the North End. Shout out Joe. And I was riding the biggest high when I found out that I was going to do ringside for the Bruins for Women in Sports Night in March, because it's the Bruins, you know what I mean? And we get through it, and I think my first walk off was Fraser, and like sometimes people are like, Fraser doesn't say too much, so you might get stuff, you might not, and like I pride myself on if I can pull something out of a guy, but how to do it. Like, you can't do the same old status quo, and you can't be his fake friend and ask about his golfing handicap and all this other stupid stuff. Like, I think they're so tuned into like the questions that are going to come at them. So I always like to ask players about other players, because I think that people are comfortable praising what's happening around them rather than themselves and stuff. So like once I got through that interview, people were like, wait, Fraser said more than 3 words. Like, he actually described something and whatever. And it did really well on the NESN post and stuff. And then Joe from the North End, he tried to find something. And I was like, Joe, talk to me. What was the issue with this interview? What would you do differently? Like, I want you to know that you're heard. And he was like, what? And then, like, I posted a selfie the next day, and he was like, this is why women. I was like, because I like my outfit, Joe. Like, there's no boobs, there's no butt. Like, what's the problem? And then he's like, I can't find a problem. And I was like, okay, so we're friends. Like, I remember one of my bosses being like, what's this whole conversation you're having? And I was like, I'm just making friends. Like, we're trying to.
Joe.
But at this point, Joe has no other steam. You know what I mean? I helped him talk it out. There was nothing there to begin with.
Can confirm this is not Joseph McLaughlin.
No,
so.
this is not.
You did not
sorry.
I am
It's
not
not
from
me.
the
You did
North
not
End.
meet Joe from the
This
North
is not
End.
Are
me.
you from the North End, Joe?
No, not at all. Not Italian, so not Italian.
Well, McLaughlin definitely speaks
Yeah.
to other roots. That's
Yes.
for sure. You're safe. You're safe. It's not just Joe.
We always give Joe, because he's a Maple Leaf fan, so we kind of give
Oh
him a little.
no! Stop it! Stop.
I'm
I'm
just kidding.
learning
He's not.
so much.
He's not a Maple
Guys,
Leaf fan.
You
We
have
just
to
give
tell
him.
people this before they come on and talk to you. Like, a Yankee fan and a Maple Leaf is
Oh
like
my
a,
gosh.
that's a big
That's the
old.
part of it. It's a big surprise, so we like seeing the
Yeah.
reactions, you know.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
like to see
I
that.
totally love the blue and white so much more than the Bruins that I grew up with and watch from the beginning. And just because I
Oh.
write some stuff for the Blue Jays doesn't mean.
Oh, well,
um,
you guys
so
have
the Blue
Gavin
Jays.
McKenna and all that jazz.
Yeah, well, this
Yeah, Gavin McKenna's gonna walk into a bar, get in a fight, and get sent back out of Toronto.
I feel like that's the Toronto style. He's got to
You're
really.
right.
I think it's just gonna up the ante around a guy like that for sure. He's in the right place to do that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he for sure is. But that's all the questions I have. Jonah, you wanna?
Yeah, I
Bring
think.
up the rear.
I mean, we've heard so much about kind of like your journey. We've heard like failure, and also just like these lighthearted moments. Obviously, Joe from the North End, like stuff like that. It's just great to hear. But my kind of final question is, what's been the most rewarding part of being a person in the sports industry?
Oh, the best part is when you have somebody getting into the industry reach out to you and kind of like pinpoint a moment of when what you did encouraged them to continue going after what they want. I've always told everybody that I've had a chance to connect with, like, my job means nothing if I don't make time for the people who are trying to get into this industry, because I did have several never meet your hero moments, and that sucked. And I think that almost discouraged me from wanting to go after this job in this industry. So the most rewarding thing is when I hear from students or, anyone who's just now starting and they're like, hey, I saw this hit that you did or this broadcast, and like it made me feel like I was capable of doing this, because that's the point. Like I said, if you're too concerned about it being an oversaturated industry, then you're already psyching yourself out rather than like genuinely believing there's room for all of us, or like this cool collabs that you can come up with. Like, I want to be able to work with some of those people. Like, there's a guy, Marcus, that does digital Bruins content, and I met him on the suite night for the Bruins when they invited content creators to come and announce the Stadium Series jerseys and stuff. And like, he'll always be like, can I ask you about this? And I'm like, yes, I'm accessible. I'm bad with my phone, but I'm accessible. So like, that's always a big one. But I'd be remiss not to say that like anyone that I've looked up to in the industry who's credited a part of my work or something that I've done, like that's one of the biggest highs that you can get, because you're kind of getting that nod that says that you're on the right track. And, I had a situation when I first got to Boston of some intense hockey fans, and they were coming at me for gender and race. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced that. But then you get an Elliot Friedman and a Kevin Weeks reaches out to you and, telling you that they've not only seen your work, but they pinpoint the parts of your work that they think are so great and going to make a statement and an impact in this industry, in this world. And it's moments like that that just kind of like they're always going to sit with you. So I've had a few people that I've really just like admired who they are, their work and their footprint, reach out to me. And like whenever I kind of have these slow moments or these frustrating parts of my career, like I kind of pull back on that. And like hearing from those guys, that was just a year ago, coming up here shortly. So you never know the timing in which you're going to get encouragement either.
Yeah, and I mean, even think, in my perspective of it, I mean, I don't see it as a job working in the sport industry. I think it's more of just, it's my life and I just enjoy it. It's a hobby, I like to say,
Yes.
just because it's so fun to work in sports. So, but I'll leave it open to Joe, Colin, if you have any final questions here.
I do not. It has been.
You didn't
such a
ask me if I
pleasure.
had any final questions.
But you said you had the last one before.
What if I had another one?
Okay, then if you got one, go.
What if he was newly inspired?
That is true.
But,
Nothing on my end, but
I would say I do have
this
one
is
thing
awesome, so
before.
appreciate the time.
Steve does have one.
Yeah, it's not really a
He was
question.
inspired.
It's more. It's not a
Inspired.
question. It's not really a question. But
Sun sports.
but Kasey, so for like the next minute, or it doesn't have to be a minute. We'll say it's like a 60-second timeout. Any words of wisdom that you want to say out there? Like it can be about life, about sports. Any piece of advice that you have ever gotten in your life that has really helped you become the person you are today.
Oh man, I think it's what I said earlier, like not taking things personally. And I don't want that to mean not taking accountability. You always want to reflect on what you can do better. But I think that this industry, you're going to meet loads of people where this industry is like their entire life and their identity. And unfortunately, guys, those people are the scariest people because they will do anything to keep their position and to make sure that they're protecting themselves over everybody else. And you know, that's a tough thing because you don't want to fall into that trap because you're hard to work with. People don't trust you and you don't want to have that nature about you. So it's just like, take accountability, always reflect on what you can do better. Know that everything that you do has a step forward, but also just not losing yourself, not making this industry your entire persona, your entire identity. And again, you're going to learn to trust yourself in different ways. So my biggest advice is always, you know, make sure you're uncomfortable. There's so much glam in the grunt work and there's a lot of power in, you know, being yourself and really being authentic to your content and your delivery and all of that, because that wins out at the end of the day. And from what I'm hearing, the rumblings in the networks right now is like they're looking for the yous of the world. So like really just kind of go for it unapologetically and be yourself and produce your content and find your voice, your identity, your you. And it might look similar to other people, but that doesn't mean that you guys are one and the same. So it's kind of really trusting the person that you're developing to be. And like, if you're passionate about it, keep doing it because a door is going to open. I'm living proof of that. 10 years in this industry. I can count the 3 big opportunities of my career and kind of searching for the next one, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's awesome stuff. Yes. But I think that's going to wrap it up. I mean, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, Kasey, learn more about obviously your journey and then just some words of advice for the newer generation that could become, or someone who's maybe a little older trying to still sneak their way in. I think it's awesome just to hear perspective from someone who, you said 10 years in the industry. That's amazing to hear. And we're looking forward to see what your next opportunity could be as well. But if you guys want to follow us on Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube, the Pressbox_Quartet. Once again, Kasey, it was a privilege. Thank you for joining us here on episode 10. And any final remarks from you?
No, thank you guys. This was so much fun. I'd be happy to be back and maybe not talk your ears off for 2 hours. I promised you guys 2 hours anyway, so I'm happy to come back and fill out the back end of this. But you guys were great. I'm so glad Jess connected us.
Awesome. Well, thank you all once again for tuning to this episode, and we will see you next time.